Hello, my name is Brother Sean, and I'm sharing with you something about spiritual loopers. I came across this a few months ago and I thought, oh, it doesn't mean anything. And then I heard somebody pass comment about it in an article on the internet, and I thought, there's some truth in this. Spiritual loopers. And it reminded me again of my monastic life as a young monk, when we would attract a lot of monastic tramps. Now that sounds a crazy one. What is a monastic tramp? A monastic tramp is someone who convinces the community they have a monastic vocation. They haven't. They're wanting to doss down, take advantage of the community so as to feed their ego from a selfish point of view and have some rest, a holiday on the cheap. We call them a monastic tramp. Not a nice term. But what's a spiritual looper then? Well, I see a spiritual looper as someone who loops. In counselling we use the word looping a lot. They go from one crisis to another, one drama to another. No sooner are they through one drama and there's another one waiting in the wings. Spiritual loopers, I sense, are individuals who change their ideals, philosophies on a whim, and they follow the whim rather than test it. They don't sit down and reflect in their quiet time. They rarely engage with the heart in prayer. They live on the edge. And the only way for them to face whatever and to deal whatever comes into their life, be it positive or negative, is to feed that looping, that hunger, to loop from reality into make-believe. In other words, they're living more in make-believe world than they are in the real world because they can't cope. Because it doesn't feed their ego. So a spiritual looper is one who desperately needs professional guidance. And often that guidance is not always available in a monastic community, because you rely on the integrity of each person to follow their heart, to be true to their heart from day one. But not to suddenly come out a year or two later or a lifetime later and start manifesting or exhibiting signs of being a spiritual looper, of one who's totally disconnected from reality. To avoid becoming a spiritual looper takes a lot of courage. One, you have to own it. You have to own your feelings. You have to be true to yourself. And you have to share that truth with someone you trust. But not take advantage of that by abusing that trust. Because spiritual loopers have a habit of what I call cold calling. They go from one door to another of friends, acquaintances, and they unburden themselves onto them, and when it suits them they move on. They loop from one person to another as they do from crises to crises, because they know better. They know better than anyone. They are the masters of their own destiny. They're the ones that pull the strings. They're a nightmare to live with. They certainly are a lifetime commitment, but they're draining, they're high maintenance, both mentally, physically and spiritually. And in society, the spiritual looper can get lost in the crowd, but in a monastic community, sadly, they stand out like a sore thumb, because one of the traits they have is they're not consistent. They dream, they're dreamers, they drift. And it's good to be a dreamer. A lot of the saints were dreamers. but they also lived in the real world. And they lived within their lifestyle choice, and obviously to their vow of obedience. Francis, I guess, was a spiritual eco-warrior, but not a looper, although at times when he went from one place to another, like Teresa of Avila, you could probably say they were loopers, but they weren't. They were consistent in their commitment. In other words, they honored their heart what God had asked of them. They delivered to the best of their ability, but they never squandered their gift. Francis never squandered, belittled, or coerced a brother or sister into their silly shams. But Francis could see them coming, and I guess that's why he imposed a rule of life that was quite strict for the time, because he knew human nature. And being a womanizer himself, he knew that he was attracted possibly to a bit of looping, but he knew that once he fed his ego, the looping would begin. So through prayer and discipline, he actually did not feed the desire to loop, he controlled it. But today you find in society a group of people, mainly you find it in the acting world, you do find it in the professional life, but in the acting profession you do find a lot of loopers. They drift from one crisis to another, the least little thing they blow their top, but because they're so used to living in make-believe land, that they carry on the character in real life. And there are individuals who are good at that. I call them the Peter Pan. They're frightened of growing old. I had a sister, Lord rest her soul, and she shared with me, a good few years ago, she said, Sean, she said, Jesus, she said, I'm dreading going 50. What? Oh, I'm dreading it. I don't want to be old. I said, but you're getting older. Don't talk to me, she said, about growing old. I said, okay, I won't. And there are people like that in real life, and growing old is such, it's bad news. And they're a candidate for looping. They will do anything rather than face that reality. They'll do anything than have a reality check that they're 40 going on 50. No, can't be. They'll incur expense, they'll change their appearance, they'll do anything and everything to avoid the reality check. And living the monastic life is a good test base, because you live within four walls, and sometimes those walls can close in on you. You can't escape, especially if you've taken the vow of enclosure like I have. Okay, I do go out to do the shops once a week, and I do take the dogs out for a walk around the block into the woods. But regarding exotic holidays and all of that, I don't bother with that. But to be a spiritual looper living in a monastic community, oh, don't go there. I can't imagine in the 21st century that the system would even allow anyone to get through the network. But they do, because they're cunning, they're crafty, and they have their plan well rehearsed. They will get what they want, when they want it, where they want it, and to hell with everything else. They won't even consider the feelings of others, providing they get what they want. So they loop. They loop from one crisis to another. To live the spiritual life, you know and I know you've to be consistent. And one of the things that keeps us consistent is discipline. Prayer, discipline, fasting, and joy. And not to be a dreamer, not to be living or imagining that the fields are greener at the other side of the mountain. They're not, they're just as barren. to live within your means, to live within your means, and to do and follow your heart by listening to your heart. That is the best reality check to stop us becoming a spiritual looper. Thank you for watching. Well done.